Okay.
So, we should be streaming. Are we streaming? We are streaming. Yes. Hey, YouTube, wakeupuk.net. God bless you. And any of you folks watching at DailyChaos.news. Coming up in 5 minutes time, 6.5 minutes time actually, after the ad break at revolution.radio. The show will be starting, and so oh wow, it's going to be pretty fascinating today. Angus Tuttle, Chinese dissident. He's actually from northern England. He's a Geordie, been living in China for 20 years. He's going to be telling us about what it is to be living in a totalitarian regime, prepping us for the Great Reset. That's coming up in just a few minutes time. Ignore the clock. It's in a few minutes time, people. Hey Mookie. First dibs over at YouTube. Will YouTube ban today's show? Ha! Copyright free, for goodness sake. Anybody trying to pull it down? Do apologise, bit of dead air there. Yeah, always a good idea to queue up another track when you go and get some water. How's your daughter? If you're watching an archive version, you might want to fast forward about 2-3 minutes to the top of the show. Always start streaming on Wake Up UK and at YouTube a little bit early. Just patching into revolution.radio. Is Revolution Radio in the background there.
Informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today.
Patriots in the States and around the world.
Our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the best, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly in for the politically
Oh yeah,
aware.
you know what? It looks as though everything is working today, my word. Organised chaos. Obviously, apart from the hair, you know, another bad hair day, all that.
This is Thomas, aka a man painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance to come back?
About 30 seconds, people.
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
This is London. Yeah, something like that. Oh. Wrong one! Oh, blimey, I'll tell you what. You just can't get the staff. Do you know what I mean? Hey, folks. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good people. Welcome to the Daily Chaos. Yeah. The show ain't daily, but the chaos is. Or to our bloody KO. Know what I mean? I'm Ollie Connolly. Thanks for turning up. Today's show, escaping the CCP. Yummy. Great reset. So what's it going to be like? Geordie lad, Angus Tuttle's been living in China for 20 years. And even prior to that, was extensively travelled. A remarkable and brave man with a fascinating insight of what it's like dealing with a totalitarian regime. He has chosen to shed his anonymity to warn mankind about the kind of suppression the rest of us have in store once the globalist psychos get their way. And we're living in their new world order. Or they have more recently rebranded as the Great Reset. Sounds a bit more palatable, I suppose, yeah, than what old George Herbert Walker Bush was parroting all those years ago. Plus, at the top of the second hour, a brief head-to-head from Daily Chaos' Canadian and Australian stringers, respectively, Mr. J and Craig Workman, comparing tyranny. And an abstract, yeah. Is COVID-19 being used as a key to bankrupt us all? Bringing in the China model on a global basis. Is that why the likes of New Zealand now locks down, ruining lives and livelihoods based on the evidence of a single case of Wu flu? Did you know Trudeau went on the telly to say this pandemic, I quote, has created an opportunity for a reset? Oh, Charlie boy, yeah, who launched the Great Reset project back in June this year. Oh, what's his name? Charlie Sachs, Coburg, Windsor, whatever. He said the time to act is now. And then you got the World Economic Forum. By 2030, you will own nothing and be happy. Communism for the masses, run by fascists. Zero debate, no public mandate. Welcome to the chaos. Oh, no, and you know what? That's enough of that. Okay, God bless you, Angus Tuttle, for popping on the show, sir. First of all, let me just have a quick look at your avatar, yeah, because you've given us a picture today. We're trying to protect your identity a little bit, although I don't think that's particularly possible online at all, frankly, as we've discussed in preparing this show, you and I. But first of all, tell us, we'll get into that. Tell us, what is that logo or that icon or that picture?
Hello there. Yes, it's Tiwaz is the name of it, and it represents the Nordic god Tyr, which is where we get the name Tuesday, Tursdag. And so basically that's kind of, it's, used as a birth sign as well. So that's where that comes from. And related to, in Greek and Roman mythology, to Mars, the god of war. But that's not what I'm here for.
That's what they're here for, by the looks of it. These people hiding behind the curtain.
It certainly is.
Can I ask, sir, please? I understand you've been. Hold on a sec. Oh, for crying out loud! Wait, were you? Yes. Revolution Radio. I didn't unmute, did I? I didn't unmute. You know what? It's not called the Daily Chaos for no reason. Do you know what I mean? I do apologise. God bless you, Revolution Radio. All of you folks at youtube.com/Daily Chaos and at wakeupuk.net. Thanks for joining us. And I do apologise for being an idiot. Yes, more on number one, Ollie Connolly. Right, okay. So, Angus, 20 years in China, as I understand it. Is it not a bit risky for you to be coming on a show like this, having a chat with us?
Absolutely. As you say, there is no escape. Everything is monitored. My telephone number is connected to my passport, and they know my IP, and every foreigner in China, whether they know it or not, they actually have an officer assigned to them who also chats with the neighbors. So, yeah, and of course, we've had the technology for a long time to turn telephone microphones on and off, and turn cameras on computers and so on. So kind of, as long as the the 50 Cent Army rather don't find out, I'm okay. 50 Cent Army are a group of volunteers which number in the tens of thousands. Some of them are paid as well, and they basically are allowed to go beyond the Great Firewall and monitor Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and so on, and find people online who are saying things which do not equate with the party line. And then, of course, if they find you, then they will, first of all, bombard you with comments, and then, of course, track you down. And when they track you down, they do that with what they call a human flesh search. And they use every means possible, various groups throughout China in society to track you down and find you. And of course, let's not forget biometrics, voice analysis, and so on. Nowadays, they're very good at that.
We're going to get more into that and talk a little bit about the risk factor involved. But you've been there for 20 years. Then why are you in China?
Well, long story. I'll try and put this in a nutshell. In the early 90s, I decided I would travel to China through Europe and do the Trans-Siberian Express, and then I spent rather a lot of money in Amsterdam and decided to stop off in Berlin to do some work to get money to move on. And then I met a woman, then a year later we were married, and then 13 years later we were divorcing. And I thought, well, what will I do? I thought I'd finish my trip. I'd always fancied coming out to China and seeing, what was here. I've always had an interest in history. And so that's what brought me out here. But China tends to suck you in, so I had planned to leave 10 years ago, but circumstances caused that not to be the case.
So basically, it's a woman.
Yeah, it is.
It'll do that. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right. And you aren't happy there? You kind of want to leave or what?
Oh, desperately so. Desperately for a long time, because everything that's happening now really in China, I saw this coming a long time ago. And the most common sentence or comment that my wife makes is, "你说的对." What you said is correct. That is to say, I keep predicting things and they keep occurring. And the latest thing today, which she commented on and said, "你说的对," what you have said is correct and has come true, is the fact that now we've discovered today that they will no longer give anybody in the education sector or certain other sectors of work in China a 1-year visa. You will only get a 3-month visa, and you have to reapply every 3 months, which means that I, a family man with 2 children out here, will be constantly repeating visas throughout the year. And then the question is, of course, because they've also shattered the education system in terms of English language, because recently they brought in a huge swathe of legislation affecting a lot of different businesses in China, but particularly the English language system, because for the last few years, the government's been very upset and disturbed about Chinese people going abroad. And what they say they are learning abroad is 不爱国, meaning not loving your country. So they think they're going abroad and learning not to love the country. But the point is, what they're doing is they're going abroad and simply reading the news. There's nobody teaching them anything specifically. They're simply reading the news and realizing that China is not what they thought it was. Where they come from and the history that they've learned is not necessarily true. And so this has always been a big threat to the party and the stability of the party, is because right in the beginning, when they opened up in the late 70s, they had to balance, we want money to come in, we want investment coming in, we want technology coming in, we want people to come in and train our people and so on, foreign experts, which I've been registered as in the past several times. And then at the same time, manage the influx of philosophical, political, and other data that they really don't want coming in and people knowing about. And this is something they've had to balance now, right from the time that they initially opened up. But of course, under the current leadership, this is being clamped down on. So as of this year, pretty much all of the English language schools in China are to be shut. No foreign English language textbooks are allowed in China anymore as of this month.
Hold on, Ken. Yeah. So, Angus, something's gone on with your audio. What's happened with your audio there? You've gone down a few notches. Just pop that up.
I think that was. Oh yeah, I think probably that was an email alert came in and probably deadened my sound. Okay,
right. Okay. I can pop you up a bit this way as well, but basically we were unable to hear you, and yeah. Okay, let me bung you up there on the fader a wee bit. I don't really see what the problem is. That Xi Jinping, he looks like such a cuddly bear type character, doesn't he? He's declared himself as a kind of a new Mao dictator sort of a thing. As of about, 18 months ago or so, he did that. It is a kind of a communism when I think you and I are more or less the same sort of ages. When we were kids, it was the idea of it was, everybody lived in basically the same sort of level of poverty and what have you. That doesn't quite seem to correlate with the brand of communism that we see in China these days. How would you describe Chinese communism?
Well, they call it communism or socialism with Chinese characteristics, is what Mr. Xi describes it as. But in reality, it's communism is what? It's just fascism. It's all about control. And the thing you have to remember when you're looking at China is that before the communist revolution, you already had a revolution against the emperors. The Qing dynasty, and prior to that, you had the Ming were there. And as far as I'm concerned, and many other people are concerned, there was nothing but another change of emperor. And effectively, it's the same members, the same families, basically running the whole show since the takeover. And it's all about control. It's all about securing their position. The thing is, of course, don't forget that they've pretty much taken everybody for a ride for a very long time now. They give people this toy money called renminbi, which is, non-tradable outside of China. And then they take the real money that comes in trade and formally pop that into accounts in Hong Kong and elsewhere. That's pretty much the main reason, by the way, why they went into Hong Kong so early, was because in 2017 they'd already kidnapped an international banker. If anybody would care to do the bank research on that, you'll see that they kidnapped an international banker who was pretty much permanently resident on his own floor in the Four Seasons Hotel in Hong Kong. And he's the party banker. Wow, I'm really putting myself in danger here. I swore. Pardon me, but this is dangerous. Yeah. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Pardon me.
No, that's all right.
But,
that's all right. Go on. Yeah. Hong Kong, for example, has been heavily suppressed. The protests by the students and what have you. We get a certain amount of information about it in the Western world. What sort of information about what's been going on in Hong Kong, and now, for example, the threat to Taiwan with all the buzzpasts and so on and so forth, do you get in mainland China?
Well, first of all, of course, everybody knows that the news here is heavily censored. So people generally don't get anything of what's happening in Hong Kong, except, through word of mouth. I heard things like on the street, when it was really kicking off, we're sending a lot of police officers down, a load of policemen are going down from the mainland and onto the island, and which they certainly shouldn't have been doing if that's true, because that's basically an invasion, and they still had a treaty. But people don't generally get anything on the news very much about that, except anything which is, towards the party's favor. Even when they started shipping dissidents out of Hong Kong, and putting them on buses and bringing them to the mainland, that really didn't come into the news here. With regards to Taiwan, of course, that in itself is a very sensitive subject here, and so how they frame that is, we are going to liberate Taiwan. Quite from whom or what is the question? Liberate them from their
democracy,
freedom, because actually freedom and democracy, because actually they have one of the highest ratings in the world for freedom, democracy, and salaries. So they're doing very, very well. I don't think they want to come back this way. But for a long time, it's been known that the government here on the mainland has been, putting people into and money into Taiwan to kind of divert public opinion, to change public opinion, and subvert essentially from the inside, because they know they can't do it from the outside, because there's a huge museum of treasures that were taken there. And this is why, I'm not too worried about them bombing the place, because I don't think they really will, because they've got so much history which they wasted during the Cultural Revolution here by smashing it to pieces and burning it. I don't think they want to be seen again to be doing that on the Taiwanese island there,
Look, before we carry on, I just want to say to you, you're a very brave man coming on the show, and we discussed this a lot before the show. We talked about, masking your voice and stuff like that. We haven't got you on camera and things as well, but we know that isn't enough. That if they want to know who you are, they know who you are. They can find out who you are. That's the reality. I just want to say, if there's anything that you don't want to answer or you don't think you should answer, please don't. I did have a question about Taiwan, and again, it's a question that you may not want to answer, and it is a bit speculative anyway. But actually, I don't know that Taiwan would be quite the pushover for China that a lot of people assume it would be. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it won't, because it's actually very, very well equipped, very, very well trained. And not only that, recently, of course, Japan has chipped in and said, if you touch Taiwan, we'll have a go at you as well. And now they're building up their defensive forces to be able to go on the offensive. Because, of course, if Taiwan is taken, that brings the Chinese border so much closer to Japan, which is already, their ships and fishing vessels have been being bumped by Chinese, vessels banging into them everywhere and invading their waters and so on. Not only that, the Chinese government has been doing that also in Vietnamese waters, Philippine waters, all the way down to Indonesia and so on. I don't think it would be a pushover. I think Taiwan alone could probably give China a very good run for their money, because although China does have the largest standing army in the world, it isn't necessarily so well equipped. Basically, you often see soldiers in plimsolls, really.
Okay. You mentioned earlier you could see what's coming. What is that?
Closing. China's closing again. This is Cultural Revolution 2.0 has begun. It already has begun. It started a while ago. Basically, it all started in 2012 when Mr. Xi came into power, because all that time right from the beginning, from day one, the person he put in charge of education came on TV the day after and said, we don't need foreigners in China teaching us English or any other languages. We can teach ourselves. And then also regularly mentioning, foreigners have abused China for 150 years and humiliated us. The time for that is, coming to an end.
There is quite a bit of truth in that, though, isn't there? I mean, for example, the Opium Wars.
Well, yes, but if you look at the Opium Wars and see what led to that, basically, China was, economically, they weren't buying from the West. The West was buying from them, and Britain had pretty much offloaded all of its silver because they wanted paid in silver, the coffers were getting very, very dry, and it was noted then. I'm not making excuses for this, by the way. History is history.
Yeah.
But they noted that the Chinese had an opium habit, and so they said, "Oh, right, then okay." So they started, growing it where they could grow it and selling it back, but in return for silver. And it only took a few years to replenish the coffers of sterling. So that's that's how things were done. But to be honest, unfair trade practices. Well, we've pretty much seen that happening for a long time now. China's been getting a very loose run in the past. Very low import duties and so on.
Yes. Why do you think that is? Out of interest.
Well, because they kept up this whole thing about we're a developing country. You have to be nice to us. They do that, I mean, I've had a few run-ins with people in the past here in China, and what they'll do is these kind of stab you in the back, and then when you complain about it, they'll go, "Oh, well, that's not very gentlemanly of you." No, that's because you've done something which wasn't very gentlemanly anyway as well. So how do you expect me to respond?
What is it? What is it? What is it? I really want to get into the guts of what it's like to be living in a one-party state. I mean, sometimes we talk, for example, we say, you know what, a benevolent dictator wouldn't be such a bad thing. I guess in if you like, a utopian society, if it was truly utopian, truly, it wouldn't matter. But you don't have that, do you? What is it like living in a one-party state, please? Because that is the way, that is what they're looking or have been trying to do by the sounds of it, going back decades now. Politician after politician after politician talking about this new world order. We know that the EU was set up as a cornerstone. They also wanted to set up, for example, the African Union, the North American Union. That's largely what NAFTA was about, for example, the North American Free Trade Agreement. They've been trying to do similarly with an Asian Union encompassing also Australasia. And that arguably is what that trade conglomeration is about, that Trump said we don't want anything to do with that, for example. And the idea was to pull these cornerstones once formed together into a global government, a single global government. And now, apparently, when you go to, for example, the World Economic Forum and look at their notes about the Great Reset, which is just a rehashing of the New World Order. I don't know, sounds a little bit less Bond villain, which is kind of ironic when you look at Klaus Schwab and he looks like a Bond villain. I mean, quite literally in his cape and all the rest of it. So we seem to be headed in a direction of a China-style model of totalitarianism. Is that something that we should be scared about? What is it like to be living in a one-party state?
Well, yes, you should be very, very afraid. What it's like. You have to watch what you're saying all the time, whether you're inside or outside of the house. Even when I'm here at home with my wife talking, for example, I may not say Xi Jinping whilst in the living room, because if I say that, of course, because the front doors of the apartments face onto the corridor, which, and opposite us is another apartment, and the guy in there is a party member, and so I can't even say the name. He who must not be named. You have no mind. You look at the life people have here. Look, they have these businesses, and the money comes into the country, and it goes into the bank, and the bank converts the dollars. This is their profits and so on. It converts the dollars and the pounds and the euros into renminbi, toy money, which it then gives to the people. Then the real money goes out of the country into various bank accounts, and then every year, even if you're a millionaire in China, you're allowed, 500,000 renminbi to, use abroad. So you're allowed some real global currency to use abroad. So, it's oppressive. It's oddly enough, I never really thought of that before. How we hear these words and oppressive government, this, and you never really think of that. I've been living under the stress of it for so long. I hadn't really realized just quite how oppressive it was. But yes, certainly recently I've been very desperate to get out of here. And I don't think people in the West want this at all.
You suggest that people become cowed, conditioned, get used to it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it was David Rockefeller back in the 1970s, after Nixon had made his visit, I believe was saying something along the lines of, we've learned a lot from the People's Republic of China because they've illustrated quite clearly how easy it is to cower people and make them do what you want them to do. And really that is the case. Here people unthinkingly obey, they're not far off that kind of level of obedience where you could say, go up to the 30th floor and jump off. You all have to do it. Otherwise, there'll be a problem. There are probably some who would do it. But I'm not saying everybody's like that, but, it's that kind of unthinking, no discussion whatsoever, no secondary discussion with yourself. It's just, we've been told, so we have to, and that's it. Blind obedience. You
make it sound like people are zombified.
They are, and this is the thing, because essentially a life in China consists of, now it sounds very similar to the West. If I say it consists of going out, going to work, coming home, having your dinner, having a shower, watching some TV, and then going to sleep. When I say that, it sounds kind of very much like, well, we do that in the West as well. Yes, but actually in these cities and towns which consist of nothing but 30-story tower blocks, and all of the parks are so new that the trees are as thin as pencils, and everything just seems kind of steel and glass and empty, and there's no real greenery for you to enjoy. And because the country's so vast and huge, it's not like the UK, for example, where you can get in your car and go to the park and be in quite a rather luscious green park in a few minutes, or go to the countryside in half an hour, or the beach in 40 or 50 minutes. It's not like that. You have to book a ticket on a plane here because it's so vast. So you're stuck in these cities, and by the way, it's kind of almost eternally grey. You forget what blue sky looks like. And I have actually seen TV programs in China where they ask the children, have you ever seen blue sky? And they go, yeah. And they go, okay, when? And they go, on TV. And on posters and in books. And recently I was in Shanghai, and as I was going through Shanghai, looking at the where they were building new buildings, and they had these big posters on the walls advertising these beautiful new buildings to live in. All of the skies were blue, but none of that was actually reality, because the sky is grey.
China is, just as an aside here, I mean, it must be, I imagine there must be vast, what is it, the size of continental Europe, a vast country. There must be some stunning countryside around China. Do you not get to see it?
Not really, no. Because as I say, you have to actually fly somewhere. Where I live is as flat as a pancake.
But that's not the fault of the state, is it? That's
no, it isn't. It isn't. But the fault of the state is the cities themselves and the way people live in these cities, because there are no homes. We live in concrete shoeboxes. It's and people, when you talk to Chinese people, it's always the same kind of facial expression. They build their own personal space in their minds, they even if they're unhappy, they're still smiling.
Okay.
Everything's internal. It's all very internal. Your world becomes very internal because you dare not.
Go on. Sorry, Angus. Carry on, please.
Yeah, you dare not speak out, even about simple things like just saying, oh well, but basically what I've just been saying, that would be, how dare you, and be very frowned upon.
Because I mean, you're
comparing,
you're Geordie. originally, a very, very different background indeed. That you and I know that you go down the pub and it is absolutely, have your pint of Nuki Brown or whatever, and it's absolutely chock-a-block full of characters, of individuals. Is there much of a sense of individuality in China, or?
Well, first of all, going down the pub, that's not really something the Chinese do. Everything is about money. It's all about earning. It's all about making money, because everything has to be pumped into the education of that one child. And now, of course, you're allowed 3 children. The state is actually attempting to get people to have 3 children because there's a huge discrepancy in their numbers between the aged population and the young population, and not to mention the discrepancy between men and women in numbers. I've gone off track there. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I mean, I'm just wondering how much. Go on. I mean, you make it sound like a factory.
It is. That's precisely it. And this is what I'm always saying, to my wife, which is, 中国是一个工厂，不是一个国家. China is a factory. It's not a country. Okay, it doesn't feel like a country. It's just you're in this constant process. You mentioned going to the pub. People don't really go to the pub. They don't go out and meet and chat like we do. And when they do go out to a restaurant or something like that, again, it's all kind of very forced and phony baloney. It's very difficult to describe. It's kind of just going through the motions.
You make it sound a little bit as though people have. I'm not wanting to put words in your mouth here. You please correct me. Yeah, sure. You make it sound as though people have had the stuffing knocked out of them. That they're not allowed any character.
No, you're not, because character breeds individuality, and individuality means you're separate from the herd. And if you're separate from the herd, then you're going to have distinct and new ideas. And if you're having distinct and new ideas, then you're a threat to the state. So no, absolutely, you may not veer from the path. You will be happy in the way we say you will be happy. We will give you, well, without actually stating it, we'll put you on a certain track, and that's pretty much how you're going to live. What they call it over here in China is, liu liu jiu, 669. Zhou zhou liu, which is 996, 9 in the morning until 9 in the evening, 6 days a week. That's your working schedule. Okay, 996. So you're totally contained within the bounds of that in order to make money. So you don't actually have time for very much else at all. And also, one of the things that people say to me a lot is, you think too much. And to which my response is always, of course, you think far too little, because they're taught not to think, not to question. The Confucianary method of teaching in school is one where they learn to simply repeat texts. They don't consider the genuine meaning necessarily. And so there's this rote method of chanting everything, which is also seen then in the politics, where everybody goes out and chants together. When the leader comes. So, you're not allowed to be individuals. Individuals are dangerous. Yeah, anybody, it kind of reminds me of that, was it Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of this, anything more important than my ego, I want it found and shot now. And it's kind of similar to that, individualism. If there's any of that found, we better, bash it out of whoever's got it. School here does tend to take creativity and imagination out of the equation in terms of how people think. I know I've worked in education here for 20 years amongst other industries. Really, not a lot of imagination. I
can't help but think that sounds like, for example, the British education system. I don't know how clued in you have been with what's been going on in the West, with all the wokeism, for example, and it seems to me that the stuffing have been knocked out of people in the UK, for example, and in the West largely, increasingly as well. I mean, it hasn't happened anything like maybe on a mass-produced scale, but do you have much of an understanding of what's been going on outside of China since you've been living there, and would you be able to comment on a comparison between the education systems in China and throughout the Western world?
Yes, it is something, of course, that I've observed with great despair from a distance. But in my own business, I've had UK graduates working for me who literally, didn't know the meaning to the word seldom. And they had to explain that to them, how they actually managed to get through the whole of the education system right through to university and not know the meaning of the word seldom is a mystery. Coming to China, living and working in China, they didn't know who Mao Zedong was. They didn't know that
the chairman bloke.
That chairman bloke. They didn't know who Lenin was, and not John.
Well, John,
the other one.
yeah,
wasn't so nice.
Right.
And didn't really know that even Hong Kong was a former British protectorate,
really,
and colony. And so they've managed to go through the education system and not learn any of that. And of course, you see, what people have to understand and what people forget, I think, because I was brought up in the Northeast, as you mentioned, and we were all trained to be socialists. Of course, I went to meetings, and they were having, back then, Socialist Worker and everybody else, they were having meetings with all of the various communist parties around the world, sending people back and forwards, sharing ideas and methodologies. This has continued on. This has been going on all of this time, and it's been ignored. The right has kind of like seen it as non-threatening. They've seen these people, these leftists and these Marxists, as something to be derided and laughed at, when in actual fact, all of this time they've been subverting the education system, they've been subverting the police, they've been subverting the civil service, and the civil service is effectively the government. Politicians come and go, the civil service remains.
Yes.
And all of these things need a political enema now. They need a political enema, and we have to wash the Marxism out of education, out of the police force, out of the civil service, and it has to be then properly monitored after that. And then and whoever's doing the monitoring also has to be monitored to make sure it doesn't get back in. Let's not forget, communism has killed more people than fascism. So they've never been super duper guys.
That's right.
So it's but nobody's taught that, and this is why you get idiots walking around with T-shirts that say Guevara on them, and Mao Zedong, and don't really understand it. And they 60 or 70% of American university students saying, well, we think the US should be communist. Well, I don't think you'd like it. I can tell you that now.
Incredible, isn't it? I don't know whether to believe that figure though. That came out last week or so, didn't it? That
well, I've heard that for quite some time, but.
I wonder if there's a bit of propaganda going on there. So I mean, we talk about China or whatever, and I tend to think, well, hold on a sec, shouldn't we be referring to the CCP as the threat? But a question for you. Maybe I'm being slightly naive here, because if the Chinese people are so subjugated, condition and what have you, is there a threat? How much of a threat is there from the Chinese people as opposed to from the CCP?
There's a threat from the people in the sense that they will use, for example, we've known for quite some time there are a couple of office blocks in Shanghai which are just chock-a-block with Chinese hackers and so on. And they're a threat in that sense. The people themselves, by the way, have been changing a lot, I must say. I've noted a change in people's attitudes, particularly after the outbreak in Wuhan, because, of course, everybody was locked down, and then, thousands of businesses closed and thousands of people lost their jobs, and first time in 20 years, I actually heard grumblings and rumblings and people doing videos and really slagging the government off on videos. Of course, they all got disappeared, the videos and the people. who made them. But, they really cracked down on, I think at one point they closed down in 1 week something like 40,000 WeChat accounts. There are a huge number of telephone numbers which have disappeared. Normally, as you can imagine, in a country like China, the issuance of telephone numbers is something that continues to steadily rise. But after the virus, it was something which dropped drastically. A lot of numbers went out of use, and so it's the first time that I'm aware of in modern Chinese history that the number of telephone numbers actually fell. And I've been approached by people I know, Chinese people, who have said to me, I want to get my kids out of the country. I think there's going to be another revolution. And so the Chinese people, there's been an exodus of wealth and people in the last few years getting the hell out, because these smarter people, particularly the ones with the wealth, because they see what's happening, because everybody with money is a target by the party. And they're being arrested left, right, and center. And I've just heard this last week that 98% of all passport requests have been denied. And they've cut down the number of people leaving China. And this goes in concert with what I was saying about the changes in the law to the English language education system. They don't want people being smart enough to look out. What they want is they want everybody looking back in. That's why they've just started teaching this year the thoughts of Xi Jinping, and to which my child is being subjected to this now as of yesterday.
So let's hold on. Let me get this right. Yeah. Xi Jinping, didn't he write a book or something? And now every student in China is obligated to read it. Is that right?
Yes, that's called the Governance of China. That's and also not only that, he's opened up 18 kind of college facilities for the study of his thoughts. And so expect the little red book to come back out in the future, but instead of Mao's thoughts, it will be Mr. Xi's thoughts. So China is actually in the process of closing up again because of various reasons. The country has been economically devastated after but of course they don't want anybody in China to know that. But after the virus outbreak, with the loss of businesses, and prior to that, by the way, in the year before the virus kicked off, the American Chamber of Commerce in China, in Beijing, asked businesses what their plans were for the coming year, and upwards of 60%, I believe, said they were planning on leaving China. And that was before the virus. And of course, after the virus, many did and have done. And recently, 1,600 odd Japanese companies have left China. And the Japanese government is investing a huge amount of money to encourage businesses to relocate to Japan and or other areas in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, which is very appealing to businesses at the moment. And also particularly for Chinese businesses who have also been leaving China to go to Vietnam, because that way they can get around the Trump taxes for their exports and imports. And so,
yes.
The government, and of course, there's also been an exodus of workers from China going to Vietnam over the border. So now they're starting to put up a hard border there as well. And then immediately after the virus, we had the Hongshui, which is floods. And that was really serious. About 70% of China's agricultural land was underwater. All of their grain stores, soy stores, oat stores, silos were all soaked and flooded and destroyed. Really? I saw videos of pigs, and my wife, we even have a relationship with somebody who drowned in those floods, and the body hasn't been found since. That was a year ago. And by the way, the way they counted the deaths, they said anybody who dies in the floods will actually be counted as an accidental death as opposed to a flood death. And consequently, the number of people who died in this huge, unprecedented flood last year was less than the year before. So
I just want to say, if there is anybody from the CCP that wants to come on the show and to counter any of this, you're very welcome. There is always a right to reply on Daily Chaos. But one of the things that has been theorized, Angus, about this coronavirus is that, as we know, was it biological warfare? We know that Fauci lied about the Wuhan lab funding and what have you. Going to get more into the coronavirus side of things in part 2 of this show. But the other theory that has been bandied about quite a lot is, was it economic warfare? And yet you say, for example, and I've been reading a lot, that the Chinese economy has suffered very, very badly. Do you think that China has done well, per se, on a global relativity basis, if you like, or not so well out of this Wu flu?
Yeah, no, I don't think they have at all. I think the economy has really taken a huge beating, both from, as I say, the first of all, the initial lockdowns and the lack of trade, to the floods, then to the fact that China had to make its largest ever purchases of soy and wheat and corn and barley from Canada and the US to feed mouths here. We've seen prices escalate, go up, food prices going up 38% within a matter of weeks. And then the government has put a brake on it. And, of course, don't forget, they can just print their money here willy-nilly.
Well, they do that.
But
Everywhere.
everybody really feels it. I think, people are really feeling it. And also we're starting to see, things like the property market here, which has always been kind of the backbone of the internal economy.
Over the last few decades.
And it's really fluctuating. And because, you see, in the past, the Chinese government has supported it by bunging loads of money into that, which they do with state-owned enterprises. I know I actually worked as an agent for one in the past, and I've seen them just throw good money after bad money. So they're keeping it afloat because, because everybody invests in property, because they don't have very much else they can invest in China. You're not allowed to own shares in Apple or something like that. So they invest in property, and what you get there are actually literally ghost cities where they have whole cities that they've built and just a handful of people living in there, but people have bought the apartments because they see it as an investment, and very, very simple-minded perspective, but not realizing, of course, that's the only reason that the market is floating at all is because of the money that the government keeps throwing into it. But because they've been hard-pressed themselves, we've seen fluctuations in the market because the government hasn't had that money to put in there. And, they claim that their unemployment figures are about 5.7%, but in actuality, they're closer to about 20% when you look at the figures.
You would say that one in five people of the working, potentially working population, you say, are out of work.
Yeah. And people are, look, this year alone, you have
so those people have a chance to think, Angus. What implication does that have?
Well, it's more emotive. They grumble and growl about it. They realize something's not quite right, but they don't, because that phrase where they say, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. Well, the Chinese, of course, are totally apolitical because they've been taught to be apolitical. Because why should you be political? Because we are managing everything. Okay, and normally, generally speaking, the average citizen is very, very happy to get on with life. They know that, the government is nicking a load of money and putting it in their socks. They whatever. Yeah, we know they're doing that, but as long as they keep the ship, going in the right direction, that's fine. But then when it comes to bite them, when people are unemployed, I think it was Mao Zedong who said, the country's only 3 meals away from a revolution. So you miss 3 meals and boom, So the government is actually very frightened of the population. And so what they're doing now is trying to, stop the brain drain, stop the money drain, get people to turn inward, a new fresh wave of, the thoughts of Xi Jinping to get you back into the party idea of things, stop you looking outside of China, stop you thinking about the outside of China. This is why they've also stopped examinations for English language in third year of school now. And as I say, they've shut down all of the private English language schools as well. Wall Street, a very famous brand, went bust here just a few weeks ago. They're turning around and telling businesses now. Today, you've had messages, because they send text messages to your phone to tell you what to do, like, go and get injected with something, or,
Well, we get that. I got one today.
Yeah, but
I block them all and report them as spam.
And also, though, they send you messages like, if you know of anybody who's teaching English, grass them up. Here's the number. By the way, the number is very easy to remember. It's 12345. That's it. So you dial that number and you dob somebody in. Oh, and by the way, they have started offering money to people for dobbing people in, 200 a pop, 200 RMB a pop for, if you think anybody's, being in the wrong residential compound or doing something a bit on the naughty side, grass them up and we'll pay you 200 RMB.
That's some of the worst, isn't it? This whole
about 20
stuff. Okay, we're coming up to a hard break. Just a very brief question with a brief answer if you can. We could explore it a bit more in the second half, but I just wonder, how secure is Xi Jinping?
Well, he's not. Well, he is, but he isn't. Of course, there's a major faction. There's a split between him and he was never supposed to get the job. Jiang Zemin didn't want him to get the job. The person who should have gotten the job, who they wanted in, is Li Keqiang, who is the actual premier of China, the actual technical state leader, like our prime minister. But of course, because the party is above everything else, Mr. Xi is the party secretary and therefore, de facto leader of the country.
Is that why he asserted his authority with this kind of declaration, being an absolute dictator?
Well, yes, and he changed the law to ensure that he could actually remain in power until the day he dies.
All right, Ken. We're going to come back to this after the break, folks. You're watching Daily Chaos with me, Ollie Connolly, my special guest, Angus Tuttle, who's in China, escaping the CCP. Not able to, he isn't, but maybe the rest of us can. After the break, we've got Mr. J in Canada and Craig Workman in Australia. They're going to be going head to head, comparing tyranny. And then we're going to be getting back into the chat with Angus. God bless you, Revolution Radio. After the break.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Doopy-doopy-doo. We're still here. I've just muted the studio at Revolution Radio, and we're still here. Look, I'm just going to grab some water, folks. You might want to as well. We've got a couple of minutes or what have you. I just want to say a big cheers to Jay, to Leah, and to Pauline, who have sponsored today's show. God bless you. Thank you so much. If you like what I'm trying to do with Daily Chaos, which is basically create a bit of awareness or what have you, please give us a hand. buymeacoffee.com/Daily Chaos. Sponsor next week's show, please. And hey, I mean, if I could get it to the stage where I could get enough donations, I'd do this vocational journalism show each and every weekday. So please help me to do that. Right, coming up in just 2 or 3 minutes time, folks. Big cheers, Angus. God bless you, mate. Thank you.
What the heck is the truth? Jihad? I'm Kevin Barrett, host of
Jihad
Radio. Prosecutors, Department of Homeland Security agents, and curious passersby often ask me, just what is this truth jihad anyway? Well, everybody knows what truth is, but jihad is a misunderstood term. Jihad means effort or struggle. The greater jihad is the struggle to be a better person, while the lesser jihad is the struggle to defend the community. Brother Muhammad did say that best jihad is a word of truth flung in the face of
copyright free YouTube. Yeah, you have to think of a better reason to ban the show. I'm sure you will. It is a question every week now. Every week, will YouTube pull this week's show? That is the question of the week, each and every week. I'll tell you, they are the new Facebook in terms of censorship, as far as my experience is concerned. Of course, lots and lots and lots and lots of channels have been pulled from YouTube because, well, I don't know. They're kind of like the CCP, really, aren't they? They must be so proud.
Revolution.
Not that I rant. Not that I rant.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, calling listeners,
maybe
or
we should
chatters are
touch on
solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com.
Yes, frankly, I think it was. I put out a post on Facebook yesterday, just copying and sharing a graphic, an infographic from the Telegraph, UK, supposed newspaper or whatever. They with all the stats of all the stuff that had been lost. Oh, hold on. Right, we're back with Revolution Radio, as well as on Wake Up UK and at youtube.com/Daily Chaos as well. And so I guess that's a good time for me to unmute Revolution Radio. I do apologise. Yeah, I put out a post on Facebook, basically sharing something from Telegraph with their analysis of the amount of arms that have been left. Something like 20,000 Humvees for starters. Yeah, just so you know, Humvees, for example, and a whole load of stuff that Biden's, I don't know, inadequacy or plan, I don't know what, that they'd left behind in Afghanistan. And Facebook said, oh, yeah, Facebook fact checker, this information is partly false. They are now arguing between themselves. I suggest to you, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, you need to get together with your propaganda central HQ and work out, make sure you're all at least singing from the same hymn sheet. It's hilarious. I don't know. They're obviously disagreeing with each other or whatever, trying to confuse the hell out of each other or what. Anyway. We have got Craig Workman, God bless him, and Mr. J over in Canada. Craig's in Australia, registered nurse, says he hasn't seen a single COVID case that he can confirm at least. Is that still the case, Craig?
Yes.
Right. Okay, I want you and Mr. J, you in Australia and Mr. J in Canada, please, to compare tyranny. Go, Mr. J, what's going on? What's going on there?
Okay, hi guys. Ontario just announced yesterday that they'll be introducing health passes, I think on the later in September, the 22nd of September. So at the moment, there's been a big rush for people to push back and put out their statements. At the moment, two other provinces, British Columbia and Quebec, have introduced health passes. I'm not too sure about what's going on in British Columbia, but in Quebec, they became active today. For all non-essential businesses, and that's basically what's going on. So they've been doing protests in Quebec. We'll see what's happening.
Right. Okay. So I understand also that Trudeau is getting a bit of a hard time on the streets now. Is he going to win this election? The election is days away now?
I think. When is the date of it? Yeah, I think there's still another week at least. But yeah, he called the election because he thought he was going to get a majority, and the polls show that he will maybe lose. But I would be surprised if he actually lost. I mean,
they said that about Biden,
pull some
didn't
shenanigans.
they? They said that about that Biden would lose too, and then they rigged it by the sounds of it, by the looks of it. I mean, according to the 2000 or whatever signed affidavits, at risk of a felony. Oh no, MSM doesn't talk about that. For example,
of course not.
Is it? I mean, are we going to see this rigged? Is there any scope for it to be rigged, or is Canada more of an honest broker than that?
Well, I don't know how much more honest Canada actually is, but the reality is we're not doing mail-in ballots. And I think that's really the clincher. The mail-in ballots, I think, is what screwed up the whole American election.
Dead people voting? I mean, Biden, but wasn't that his core, his base, his political base, basically, U.S. cemeteries?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's also all that Dominion shenanigans too. So
yeah, absolutely. Does Dominion operate the voting machines that were just, oh wow, they were connected to the internet? Oh, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, and then we watched the election results coming in, and all of a sudden there was a shift of hundreds of thousands of votes from Trump to Biden, who then led. I think it was Michigan, that particular one. Unbelievable. Did Dominion have any influence, any part of this election?
Well, I mean, I voted in every election in Canada, and all of them have been paper ballots. I haven't heard anything of them being different this time around. I would be surprised if it was, but yeah, everything has been paper ballots from what I've seen.
Well, so far that sounds hopeful. What about the opposition? I mean, what tends to happen in the UK, for example, is if you get the opposition or whatever, they just do the same as the other party anyway, near us, damn it. All a bunch of so-called centrists who actually in reality are all Marxists. or apparently, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, the opposition in Canada, are they really any better than Trudeau, or are they just another lot of globalist bought puppets?
Basically, there's a saying here that the Conservative Party in Canada is the Liberals going the traffic speed. So basically, they're going to continue those policies. They're just not going to ram them through. They're just going to incrementally push them through. So, like, for example, Trudeau is outright openly saying he wants vaccine passports right across the country, basically to do anything. And the leader of the Conservative Party, he was saying that, no, we're not going to do that. But if you don't do that, like if you don't show a vaccine passport, then you're going to have to get daily COVID negative tests. So what difference is that,
Blimey. Okay, Craig, that's your cue. That's your cue. Compare tyranny, sir.
So today we've had Western Australia mandate all its healthcare workers need to be jabbed by the 1st of October. New South Wales have to have all their healthcare workers jabbed by the 30th of September. And in response to that, in New South Wales, nurses, like on Telegram, nurses are posting pictures of their face blanked out and how many years of service they've done and what kind of nursing they've done for 23 years or 30 years in a specific area. They're going to automatically lose their job on the 30th of September if they haven't been vaccinated at least once. I think earlier today as well, the Australian Parliament voted to bring in vaccine passports. Labor and Liberal combined to overrule the minor parties, and they voted for that. There's a couple of legal challenges going on, and a couple of organisers of the protests that have been happening over the last couple of weeks have been arrested, and apparently there other dissidents are being raided and arrested as well.
What happened to the truckers?
But they have abandoned the policy of suppressing COVID to one where they're allowing it to exist, but we're still locked down for up to 10 weeks in Victoria. Right. And in New South Wales as well.
House arrest. So what happened to that truckers' protest?
Well,
we've just gone quiet.
There was a lot of confusion regarding that. There was a small protest on the 30th that fizzled after two trucks were removed, well, told to move by Pauline Hanson. The web page is like the Royal Automobile Association of Queensland. There were roadblocks. The truckies did attempt something on the 1st of September because there was a lot of roadblocks going up around the country. But we don't know if something happened because the media suppression was that great. We don't know what happened.
Really? Really?
Whether it was successful or not.
Gents, what is the difference?
Happened, we're not sure.
Between the two of you, please. Just last question, actually. I'm going to go back to Angus after that. You're welcome to join us and chip in. What is the difference in terms of media suppression, would you guys say, between Canada and Australia and New Zealand, actually, if you've got any idea about that, Craig?
I think the media is just basically the government's mouthpiece. Like if you're speaking against them, like there's a total demonization campaign against any opposition against the government. It's just there's no bias or there's no kind of balance or anything. It's just
in the UK, for example, there's this big, and in the States, as far as I can see, and but around the world, in France particularly, it's very strong as well. There's this sort of anti-vaxxer type thing, and really trying to divide people. And I'm seeing it. I'm really seeing a lot of division with people that are vaccinated, really being very, very antagonistic against people who, are not. And they're calling them anti-vaxxers because they just, don't want to take an experimental vaccine or something that hasn't been around for long enough, etc. You know what? Logic. Maybe they trust in their immune systems as well. I don't know. Oh God, how old-fashioned. Are you seeing that in Australia?
Yes, very much so. Absolutely.
What about you, Koichi? How would you say? How responsible or not would you say the mainstream media is being?
Well, basically, the media has been bought out. All the mainstream media has been bought out in Canada. The main thing is that when Trudeau came to power, he started giving all the mainstream media lots of money, and he's just continued to do that with every year that he's been in power. So and then they exclude anyone who is a dissenting voice. Now, more and more, the dissenting voices are getting airtime, but not airtime in the mainstream, just because people are searching them out. They don't trust the mainstream media anymore. But at the same time, I would say the majority of people still do trust the mainstream media.
Yeah, no,
or
completely.
At least follow it. Maybe
Okay.
Trust is the wrong word. They follow it.
This comes back to what Angus was talking about in the first half, I think, with people being cowed to the point of just, accepting and what have you. Angus, are you surprised by anything of what you hear with any of that? What are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest, I'm not surprised by it. I'm distressed by it. I think the time has come for people. I saw a demonstration in Brisbane the other day, and the people had gathered, and they were simply standing there in silence. And the police were kind of milling around it, didn't really know what to do. I would suggest that everybody who is against what's happening should simply arrange a day and pour out onto the streets and go to the government buildings and even go to where they live and just stand there and look at them and don't really say anything, because it will just freak them out. Because, they expect anger, but when people just blindly stare at you, and say nothing, it's kind of disturbing. But no, something has to be done, because once you've lost it, it's very easy to go into communism, socialism, things, but once you've lost it, bloodless, usually like this, bloodless, you lose it without a drop of blood, other than the unfortunate individuals who are being poisoned or dying because they're not getting the hospitals, because the hospitals are not taking people with cancer or whatever else. But other than those deaths, you're going to have to fight to get it back. You're going to have to fight, and they have got all of the guns. Right. It's amazing. You've got the one question you have to ask yourself, in which soldiers in the UK and police, and also in Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere, is which side are you on? Are you prepared to fire on your own people? Are you prepared to fire on unarmed civilians? All you have to do as a people, I think, is get out there in enough numbers and bring the country to a stop. Every teacher who disagrees with what's going on, every doctor, every nurse, everybody in any job needs to stop. Everybody has to go on strike and go out and get down to their capital cities, outside of their city buildings, and stare at them.
I completely agree. I absolutely 100% agree. I wrote a piece the other day saying, look, you know what, we have to have national general strikes. But again, it comes down to the same thing. People, it sounds as though people are happy to put up with this. It's just unbelievable. We need to be liaising with our veterans and our old school cops, not these thugs that they put in uniform these days. Old school, when cops were proper cops, as opposed to, policing people that are protesting because their rights are being taken away. It's just incredible. It bewilders me. I think the thing that concerns me the most is the level of inaction, the complacency, the apathy from people who are old enough to have had a half-decent education. I don't know what your thoughts are about that, Angus. I want to throw this open to all of you gents, please.
Go ahead, Craig.
Angus, go on. You tell me what you think about that.
Well, I'm just waiting for the time that they finished bashing at the skin of this, because people will take it to, they'll accept this kind of thing to a point, and then you'll get people like me who will simply turn around and bite your head off. We'll push back. And so it's really a case of critical mass here. It's like pressing down on something, in a press, basically. The more you squeeze it, the more juice comes out of it, the drier it gets, the denser it gets, the harder it gets, and eventually you're left with a solid mass. And that's what's going to happen in the end. People will eventually coalesce because they see it, really. They see it that it is them and us, or really more like them or us. Because they have a very, very definite plan, which they've made quite open to us. Klaus Schwab and other people, they believe the world is overpopulated. They are using the whole weather thing and the virus thing to make up excuses for depopulation. How better to kill people? How do we do that? Well, we could give them a virus, but unfortunately, if we give them the virus, then we could get that virus and we could die. Okay, let's tell them there's a virus, and then they'll beg us for the vaccination, and when we give them the vaccination, that's actually what's going to kill them. But we can't have it killing them very quickly. It'll affect some people in some ways, so we'll put a multiplicity of things within this vaccine, which will have certain effects on some people, and some DNA and some RNA replication, and so on and so forth. People with heart disease or lung issues and so on, and others will die slower. And if they have myocarditis, well, they've got a 60-odd% chance of dying within the next few years. And we'll give them more boosters until we get the population down to a kind of manageable level, because don't forget, we don't want them all dying at the same time, because who's going to bury the bloody bodies? Because we don't want disease running rampant around the world, If you think nobody's thinking like that, the Schwabs of the world, if you think you're deluded, I think we've seen enough of conspiracy theories coming true now. It's gotten to the point where all of the conspiracies I've had for the last 35 years have all become true. I need some new conspiracy theories, please, because all of my old ones have become actual realities.
Mr. J in Canada, do you think that sounds far-fetched? And do you think that maybe there is a chance of people waking up? I'm a little bit concerned coming into this winter, another flu season. I wonder what events they're going to throw at us. Things just seem to be more and more incredible. Afghanistan was another marker. Mr. J, what are your thoughts about what you just heard from Angus, please?
Well, I mean, I think, I try not to be that cynical, but I mean, everything does point in that direction. I think the bottom line is people are still afraid. And while people are afraid, you can just manipulate them. And that's what's happening. I remember I saw an interview. Well, I didn't see the interview, but I saw the transcript of part of the interview with Hermann Goering after World War II, after he'd been captured. And they asked him, what do you need to do to control a population? And he said, you just need fear. And I think that's essentially what's happened. They have used fear to control the whole world population.
Craig, over in Australia, we always thought that you guys were very strong, you people, really, really strong, very kind of a macho kind of a demographic in terms of the characteristic, if you like, maybe a little bit unfairly, but that's the perception I think that we've had generally. But Australia just seems to have fallen over and said, you know what, oh fine. I mean, you guys in Victoria, you're literally under house arrest. People are not allowed to go into their own gardens. That's how bad it is. People are being told to wear their masks in their houses. We went through a whole bunch of bullet points last week. I'm absolutely incredulous as to the level of tyranny that's going on in Australia. What has happened to the Australian spirit?
I have not. I don't know. I think with the levels of wealth going up, people have just become comfortable and they've just become comfortable in their life, and they're not.
But they're not now.
Well, no, but like I think when the food supply starts to diminish and they're not getting food, I think that's when they're going to become enraged, because they've still got access to food and basic services and stuff. But when that starts to break down, I think that's when people are going to get pissed off, because at the moment we can still get food and
shouldn't they be now? I mean, do people have any idea as to the relatively small level of an issue that this is? I mean, for example, they're taking kids into football stadiums, filling the football stadiums with what is it, 24,000 kids or something were put in a football stadium, and they try to vaccinate them, or they did vaccinate them or something, without parental consent. I mean, shouldn't people be storming the parliament, quite frankly?
Well, yes. Well, you'd think, but I don't think they've tried that again, but they are kind of going after the kids. I haven't heard of that happening again, but well,
I mean, apparently once was enough.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, surely that should be enough for every member, anybody remotely related to that incident, to be put on trial.
I don't know what's going on. I think people are just kind of I've spoken to family members, and there was in the last week, I know 4 family members that have gone and got the jab, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just it's just the sense of disbelief and cognitive dissonance. I think it's just the level of shock is just shocking people into silence. It's just like they can't. Well, speaking personally, I still can't believe this is happening. Like, yesterday, personally, it was a distressing day yesterday because I haven't worked since the 20th of August, and I'm starting to get low with money. And I did find a solution to that, but it was very, very distressing. And I've got no access to income. Like, I can't work because I haven't had the jab, and they're starting to enforce this mandate where you have to be jabbed at least once to get work. But I know that a lot of nurses are going to leave the profession when these mandates are enforced. I think about 20 to 25% will leave the profession. And that's going to present a problem for the government because they won't be able to staff the hospitals.
Not that it's mandatory.
Especially with
Not
new
that
variant
it's mandatory. It's incredible.
Can I just jump in?
Go on, please, Mr. J. Yeah.
I'm going to have to step out after this, but basically, the CDC is in the U.S. has been heavily pushing for vaccination of children as well, right? And they've now announced that that there will be a flood of a new type of disorder where children will start to be facially paralyzed and have other parts of their bodies paralyzed. And essentially, the symptoms of this, my understanding is, will basically be this Guillain-Barré syndrome, which will be caused by a polio-type vaccine, which happened, I think, in was it Malaysia? And basically that they're warning all of their healthcare professionals that they're going to have a flood of it. They're not saying why they're going to, but they're saying you now must call it. I can't remember what the terminology is, but they have a specific term, and that's the type of disease that these kids are getting. And essentially, I mean, I would imagine it's all because these kids are being jabbed, and they know they're going to be flooded, and they want to get ahead of it. Anyways, it was a good chat, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you again for bringing us an update from Canada. I do appreciate that. We do like to keep an update on some of the main hotspots so that we can, the rest of us, get excited about what's coming, yeah? Angus, it all sounds very like we might have imagined it was to live in China, in the Western world. Now, no?
Well, it's all looking very much, you have to ask yourself, well, we all agree that something's going on. So what do you think their motives really are? To be nice to us all and buy us socks for Christmas? That's not what they're doing. Yeah, these people are intent. They see themselves as princes of the world, and they have done for a very long time, and they've been working towards precisely this. And manufacturing dissent in our countries to split us from each other, to section society into thin slices so that there is no continuity. And this is why, for example, it's hard to unify our countries now against what's going on. Although it has started to happen, we're starting to see that this issue is now becoming a politics or cross-border issue in politics now. People are really, irrespective of whether they be left or right, seeing that this is an issue that has no political boundaries. And in fact, to be honest, I'm often surprised that we're still operating with a left and right paradigm in politics. Surely it should simply be about good management by this stage in our development. And we really need to start putting some, terms on how long you can be in politics. For example, there are people who make it a career, a lifetime. It shouldn't be. It should not be. Those who make it a lifetime career choice usually end up with their fingers in far too many pies and their pockets filled with far too much of other people's substance.
Okay, let me take a few comments here. I want to ask Angus a little bit about the level of vaccination in China in just a minute, if it's possible to even know. But look, by the way, folks. This show is not saying you shouldn't be vaccinated necessarily. This show is saying it's okay to ask questions. Yeah. And by the way, anything you hear on this show, you should research for yourself, because we might be wrong. And I often am. And so anything that is said on this show, if you want to get to the bottom of it, you do the research and you can find out. Carlos says, what's going to happen to the opium farms in Afghanistan, I wonder? I don't know that they need him now, Carlos. Do they got fentanyl these days? Coming in from China, guess what? And kids are dying from that. In fact, I know a very, very good friend of mine whose brother, half-brother, died just this week from a fentanyl overdose. God bless you, my friend, who has lost his half-brother. The downliner asks, or says, always got that perception from their shows in Australia, not so much Home and Away or Neighbours. David Laddie, vast majority not wearing masks in the Metro Centre yesterday. Huge shopping centre. They're still wearing the masks here in Valencia, where I am, walking along within about 100 meters of the shore onto the Mediterranean. We always have a sea, not always, but 95% of the time we have a sea breeze coming in here from the sea. And instead of breathing in that wonderful salt air into getting a lungful of that, they'd rather wear masks. And it's incredible the number of young families that are doing that, including their kids. Unbelievable. I don't know the percentage exactly, but at least a third still, despite the fact that there is no mandate any longer, thank goodness, for people to be wearing masks, are wearing masks. Incredible. I can understand it to a certain extent with older people, but with people, unbelievable. Tricky, M. Hello, Tricky. Good to see new folks around. Australia is lost. USA will most likely abandon Australia and Taiwan, which will come under the CCP umbrella. I guess we will maybe talk a little bit about US policy, if there is such a thing as US policy, in a minute, in the wake of Afghanistan and the big cock up there, and the fact that the guy in charge of the States doesn't appear to have a brain. The downliner also says, with 25% in the professional sector, why don't you just use them to create your own departments free from government insight? And he also says, have to keep turning it up when Angus comes on. Not sure what's wrong with his mic, as it keeps jumping from loud to quiet. There you go, Angus. You've been ticked off there. We've got Pauline Davies, who, commenting on China, said it sounds totally soulless. Mookie Pook also said sounds soulless, I think referring to China. We got Bugsy out there, Warren McDonough, our cabbie, who gives us a bit of a spin on what he's hearing in the back of his cab in London. God bless him. Thanks for turning up, everybody. Right, Angus, what is the level of vaccination in China, do you think? For example, they reckon there was some report or whatever the other day in the States, and they reckon that, I think, 75%, it was a big thing, big thing, 75% they reckoned had been vaccinated. Personally, I just don't believe it. I just think it's propaganda. What would you say is the level of vaccination in China?
Well, the government says about 60%. And if they're saying 60%, you can be certain that it's probably half of that. The thing is, though, we get these text messages to, get down to your local vaccine center. And of course, people do, they, bleat their way down there. And these centers are completely overrun because they don't queue. They just agglomerate. They're all together and they're all standing there with their masks on, with touching skin on skin. Tens of thousands of people, and then they have to turn them away and say, go away, there are too many people. I have but 5 fishes and 2 loaves. Get away. So these end up sending them away again. But the thing is this, after the first vaccines, now they can't. I've seen videos where they can't get anybody to come and get a vaccine, even in Beijing, where they've got these pop-up vaccine centers on the streets, and they've got these people with megaphones shouting at all the people going by on their bikes, "Come on in, get your vaccine, and roll up your sleeves and get jabbed." And nobody's stopping. Nobody's stopping. So now what they've done is this: they've actually turned around and said, "Okay, come and get the vaccine. We'll give you 200 RMB." And in some places, they enter you in a tombola, a lottery. They're giving them money now. They're paying them. You get a lottery. You can have your name entered in the lottery, and you can win an apartment, a house, a place to live. So that's the level of, because after the first one, I mean, I personally know of a young man who is 20 years of age, went for the jab, and he's been on his back for the last 3 weeks. So whatever number the Chinese government gives you, just like cut it in half.
It's very hard to know the truth about half the problem we have these days is trying to find the truth, because you hear about adverse reactions from the vaccines. You hear about people getting this thing, whatever it is, and they're very young and they have problems as well. That I think is half the problem that we have, is this the fact that we've been lied to on such a colossal scale for so many years about so many things, particularly concerning politics and politicians. And now they're telling us that this is what we got to do. You've got to get vaxxed. Yeah, is that not? How much of a problem is that in a place like China, though? I'm surprised to hear you say so relatively, possibly, probably, maybe few have been vaccinated in China, for the simple reason because if they're more cowed, I would have thought that they would be more likely to stand in line and do what they're told.
Well, they were for the first vaccine. That was the thing. For the first one, everybody was, but it has gone down. But saying that, in my locale, a few weeks ago when they asked people to go down, they did. They overwhelmed the place, and then they sent everybody away. But then nobody really came back afterwards. I've done my duty. I've gone down there. I've had the text message. I've gone down there. They've turned us away. Well, bugger that, and get on with whatever. And then wait for the next text message.
I should just make a point. I don't know that we should be calling it a vaccine, because you know what? It doesn't vaccinate. Okay. Yeah, we a quacksine, maybe. Oh, YouTube will definitely ban the show now, because I'm not allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to express an opinion. Do your own research, people. You make up your own minds. Yeah. But I mean, I do wonder. First of all, it's not a vaccine. Apparently, you need 2, and now apparently you need 3. You need a booster. Yeah. And so, for example, I was talking to a mate of mine the other day, and he said, I got my vaccinations because I needed to travel. And now it makes no difference whatsoever. I've got my vaccines, but it doesn't make quacksines, but it doesn't make any difference. It does. I still have to fill out all the papers. I still got, etc., etc., etc. So Chinese folks, you reckon, as has been the case around the world, and it is kind of logical that there would be a drop-off anyway, I suppose, irrespective. They got a bit suspicious of the first vaccine, and that is maybe why I'm not wanting to put words in your mouth. What is the deal with that second vaccine, would you say? Are you being told about a booster now, and what is the reaction to that?
Well, of course, there's also a financial element, because the Pfizer vaccine has now been allowed entry into China, and the Chinese government wants people to use theirs. Initially, they made everybody pay for it as well, by the way, and now they're trying to give it away for free.
Really?
And they don't want people having the Pfizer.
Mm-hmm.
Why
do they not want people having the Pfizer? Apparently, by the way, the guy that runs Pfizer has said that he's not taking it and he's not mandating it for his staff. And then, as we do know, there was that guy, Mike Yeadon, who was the VP for Pfizer, the chief scientist for Pfizer, who has said that this whole road that we're going down is leading us, quote, we are standing at the gates of hell. I don't know if that's a reference to Bill Gates or what, but anyway. Oh, man, I don't know. It's just crazy, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know what
it is. Everybody, it seems, we were talking about the education system earlier. It's very much the case that people's brains have been very much turned to mush and very willing to accept pretty much anything, as long as it comes. If it comes from a man in a white coat or a woman in a white coat, it doesn't matter. But then a person from a supposed authority, as long as they have that, people will generally follow, because otherwise, we say things like ignorance is bliss, and we often don't actually really understand what we're saying. But actually, the reality is ignorance is bliss, because if you are ignorant of the facts and the realities, you can kind of drift along like a leaf on the stream, going down with the water and just flow with it. But once you've informed yourself, or once you've sought out information and become informed, then at that point in time, you have to decide, are you going to do something? You have to choose a side to put your foot down on. And that's what ignorance is bliss means, really, is that it's people are prepared and prefer to remain in that blissful ignorance because it's so comfortable.
How long is that going to be possible, do you think, in the
Not
Western
long.
world? Out of interest.
Not long. I think we've hit a tipping point, or we're certainly very close to it. Not on various levels as well. There are a whole variety of societal issues which are going to, or potentially have the power to, spark off, for example, revolution in Europe. Civil revolution, civil uprising. And of course, Europe being so borderless, it'll just go from one country to the next. England, on the other hand, the UK would actually fare fairly well because of its island nature, easily defensible. But I've been waiting for it to happen. All of these things I've been watching for a long time from the outside. It's very, I think, when you're, because when you're living in the country for a long time, you don't notice the changes. It's very much the frog in the pot of hot water. You don't notice the changes. It's only when somebody like me, for example, I've been 20 years here, and in the 20 years that I've been here, I've only been outside of China for 10 and a half months, and 4 of those were in 2004. So each time I've gone back, it's like that scene in a movie where they whoosh forward into the future and you see these changes, and they leap out at you, and it jumps right into my face, and I'm, Jesus, what is going on? What has happened? And I feel like an alien, in my own country. Are you being sold? There are people go.
Are they selling you boosters now? Are they telling you got to get a booster?
I don't. It's not just. They're not talking about boosters. No, they're just trying to get people to actually just take something. Right. They're not pressing a booster per se.
Because they haven't got that far they are in their vaccination rollout. But
the thing is, I think there's been the government has really hammered down on the internet and chatting software like WeChat, which is the most predominant social media software here. And as I said earlier, they wiped out a load of accounts, thousands and thousands of accounts, tens of thousands, in fact. And so things get on the internet. People say, oh, this has happened to my nephew, my cousin, my uncle, my brother, my mother, my father. And then it spreads very quickly. And then it's immediately, it's doused very quickly by the government as well. All mention is very quickly removed. But it gets out there. So it's kind of, if you imagine kind of a dish of water and then dropping a rock in it, you get that splash of information coming out. And then, boom, the water's still again until the next piece of information comes along. And they try to censor that as well.
I just wanted, as an aside, to ask you, Craig, please, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts as well, Angus, on this. What is the level of respect these days for the medical industry? I'll just give you a personal opinion. Yeah, when I I mean, I always had full respect for the medical profession, more than pretty much anything else. And but I didn't like doing the whole clapping thing, because that all seemed to me a little bit like, statist. I did do it once or twice, just to, kind of like, a bit of camaraderie with the neighbours, really. And we were under lockdown, severe lockdown at that time for 3 months. And I think Spain was an early leader in Europe, at least so far as that was concerned. And so it was nice to see the neighbours on the balconies. But it didn't take long, and I did that about twice actually, and it was every night. I think it was at 6 o'clock or something. You'd go out there for 2 minutes or something, and the police would drive past, and people would be cheering them and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was really weird. It was really odd, then as time progressed, and there were more and more leading epidemiologists, virologists, and what have you saying, look, this is just a lot of old cock, mate. You got to wake up. When you started seeing all that, and putting 2 + 2 together and all the rest of it, views changed, and then seeing the response of senior medical professionals just telling people get vaxxed, irrespective of the fact that these vaccines, so-called vaccines, weren't even properly recognized. For example, in the US, I know they've been doing some spin, but I still am not sure if any of these vaccines going out there are properly recognized by the FDA in the States, for example. If anything, one of them, only one of the various vaccines might be. But given the fact that the medical profession was telling everybody to do the, I mean, they used to tell people to smoke. They sold us that thalidomide thing, that drug, and carried on doing it in South America for years and years and years and years. Anyway, my question, first of all, to you, Craig, is: have you noticed? I mean, now personally, I've got no respect for the medical industry, which is not to say the individuals. No. But as an industry, zilch. They've lost all of my respect. I just wonder, Craig, as a registered nurse in Australia, have you noticed a difference in the attitude people have towards the health service practitioners and what have you? Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Well, that was a long question. Angus, what about you? What about you?
Okay. Well, of course, in China, everybody they manufacture heroes. And sometimes they literally manufacture them. They have no basis in reality whatsoever. So here, everybody in healthcare are utter heroes, and designing vaccines to save everyone, But with regards to this whole clapping and mask wearing, that's actually a psychological indicator. What they're doing is they're just checking to see how far they can push you and make you do things. Every time you wear a mask, you are acquiescing to them. And that's what that's about. And every time they can get you to go out and participate in hand clapping or hand wringing or whatever, it's an identifier, a signifier that they are in your head. And you have to be aware of that. Yeah,
no, I agree. I totally agree with your analogy about the boiling frog as well. They put the frog in the water, and then they slowly turn the heat up, and the frog doesn't notice. Yeah. You turn up a bit more, and before you know it, the frog is boiled alive. And it's a very good analogy. Right. So have we solved the world problems? Are you ever? You're not going to. Why can you not just leave China? Why can you not just? You can surely.
Well, because our former business partner bankrupted our business and used their connections to the Communist Party in court to freeze our assets, our bank accounts, and sequester our assets, and put my wife on the social credit blacklist, so she can't fly. And so essentially we are now penniless, and my wife can't fly even if we did have the money to buy a ticket. So we are trapped here, essentially, held hostage.
Tell us a bit about that social credit scoring, please.
Okay, well, your neighbors can use a social media app to give you points on whether or not you're polite or rude, or whether you play loud music, or you talk too loudly, or whatever. Or shops can use it to say if you're a good customer or not. Of course, the government uses it in cases like I've mentioned, whereby the court can put you on a blacklist then as part of that. Crossing the road now, they have a lot of LED screens on roadsides, and they snap pictures of people and show them there, people who jaywalk, and then you can lose points for that. And it's pretty much an endless list of heading towards complete and utter mind control using artificial intelligence, biometrics through cameras, microphones. If you think it's any coincidence that when you chat about something next to your phone and then you open up your phone, you get an advert for that on Google or Facebook or something, that ain't no coincidence. And they're doing this all the time. They're listening in constantly, and so is the government here. And soon so will our governments be doing that. They're already doing it now to a certain extent, because they're using, these, we have to because there are dissenters, or there are people who want to do the country harm, or whatever. They're using these excuses. They're not being monitored.
It is officially the case in both the UK and the United States that they're trying to bring in a social scoring credit system.
I promise you don't want it.
Model. It is very, very dystopian indeed. Very, very scary. Unbelievable.
I'll give you an example of how it can work. So, for example, once you're on the blacklist, you can't book a train ticket. You can't take a long distance bus. You can't book a flight. Anywhere, anyhow. So you end up having to use your own transport if you want to go somewhere else. But, they recently did an experiment where they threw a few people out on the street, just in different cities around China, just to see how long it took for the biometric facial analysis to capture them. And they were all caught, identified within, I think it was something like 2.5, 3 minutes. Welcome to the real.
It just occurred to me that this show, it was something that I didn't quite like about the tone of the show today from me, and it just occurred to me it's because this show sounds like an infomercial for democracy. How surreal? How surreal is that? I mean, it is like that now, isn't it? It's like,
isn't it? Yeah. Trying to convince people to do something good for themselves. Go on, you like it, really?
It is bizarre. We really are in a bizarre time. Let's go completely off on a tangent. What are your thoughts about what happened in Afghanistan, out of interest?
Well, of course, you'd have to understand that. You have to just simply look back to Project for the New American Century, which was an organization put together by William Crystal and Robert Kagan in 2006, and who in about the late 1990s produced a document called Rebuilding America's Defenses. And these are all hawks, and you can download the PDF version of this. And by the by, if you do look at the signatories, you might find yourself feeling rather surprised. But they laid out, a network plan of domination for the 21st century as to how America was going to control the next century and be the leader in the next century. And a lot of what was in there has come to pass, such as going into Afghanistan in the first place, going into Iraq, Syria, all of that's in there.
There were 6 nations that they targeted, no?
Yeah, and the thing is, when I first came across that, by the way, which was prior to 9/11, when I was watching the news on the morning of 9/11 and seeing people leaping to their deaths, and I was stunned, but something rang in my head. And it was the sentence, I paraphrase it as opposed to quoting it, but it was something along the lines of, we need a pearl. First of all, we need to get our own man into position. We need to draft policy. And then we need a Pearl Harbor type event to crystallize public opinion behind us. And when I saw that, of course, I knew about Operation Northwoods. And then I saw that and I thought, yeah, well, there's your Pearl Harbor type event. And it was amazing how quickly that they came out with all of the, what was that? I've been in China too long. I don't get to talk to people about these things, but the Patriot Act, what you think that was suddenly written overnight.
Brought that in quick.
Yeah. Stunningly quick,
Hey, listen, Angus, I'm going to say goodbye to Revolution Radio.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to carry on with you in just a second, if that's okay, just to wrap one or two things up. I want to ask you about one or two other bits very briefly, but God bless you, Revolution Radio. Thank you so much. I'll see you next Thursday. This has been Daily Chaos with me, Ollie Connolly. And here's to us, and bugger plutocracy. All right, see you next week. And now it's Pat Rabbit. God bless him. God bless Pat Rabbit. Coming up.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Right. Just a few Billy bonus minutes, with wakeupuk.net and youtube.com/DailyChaos. If they haven't stopped the stream yet over on YouTube, I never know where I stand with that lot. But anyway, Jay, Downliner, God bless him, over on YouTube. He's makes a good point. Belton Road. Very, very handy for China, Afghanistan, no? And lithium, by the way.
Yeah, well, I expect Afghanistan to be selling a number of their lovely arsenal of new weapons and flying objects to China. I wholly expect a lot of that stuff to come to China. And of course, you mentioned, lithium for batteries and so on. Yeah, Belt and Road. But China is actually having a problem with Belt and Road because, they're in 138 countries around the world at the moment. And of course, nobody wants to take renminbi, so they have to have cash dollars. So this is, I'm just leading in here. This takes us now to why China is actually attempting to develop its own Bitcoin as a way of getting around funding outside of China, and not use US dollars as a default currency to continue the Belt and Road.
How much of a pact do you think there really is or has been between Joe Biden and actually maybe even personally Xi Jinping? And the reason I ask, I call him China Joe because when that election campaign was going on, it came out Hunter's laptop, the one he left at a PC repair shop or whatever, and it turned out that there was loads of stuff on it, which the likes of Rudy Giuliani was talking about. And some of that stuff, for example, some of those memos that I saw were things with Hunter trying to arrange meetings or arranging meetings between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. I don't know why Hunter needed to do that, but he was involved. And also, not incredibly, between Hunter and Joe and China's top spy.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. How much collusion might there be, or is this just another, I don't know, just, whack job stuff,
No, it's not. You have to understand how things are done in China. The Chinese have a color-coded formula which they use to infiltrate businesses and governments. Okay, blue, gold, yellow, and green. They all have very specific meanings in Chinese culture. Blue refers to network attacks and intelligence gathering through the internet. Gold refers to, obviously, financial bribes. Yellow, they call pornography yellow. Yellow refers to the use of sex, gambling, drugs, and other forms of seduction. And green, of course, refers to longevity and health projects, organ transplants, that kind of thing, monkey glands and whatever else, which the Chinese have always been fascinated in. And you see that in their medicine, let's have some rhinoceros horn, let's have some, shredded, dried tiger penis. That'll make you strong. So they've been in that for a long time. But there's also a lot of people in the West who are into that. A lot of people with money who are into longevity and organ transplants and things like that. So I believe that the West has been, I think the West has been thoroughly infiltrated, because if you remember back to the 2008 Olympics, I forget which one of our government or it was a politician anyway, in Beijing fell into a honey trap, one of these yellow traps, where some beautiful girl came up to him in the hotel, and he woke up in the morning and his BlackBerry telephone was gone with everything on it. And that was a serious case. This is how they do things. They hack you. For example, banks and building societies and so on in the West have been hacked. Their data has been dumped on the market. The share price has fallen, and then the Chinese have bought them up. I mean, Rover Cars used to be in a British company. Then they hired a Chinese senior accountant, and she ended up sleeping, as I understand it. So I don't want to get into trouble, but as I remember, she was sleeping with the boss, and she was also doing the same with one of the gaffers from MG Cars as well. Anyway, sensitive information was released, share prices fell, and a company in China bought up Rover. And it turned out to be her father's company, and her father is a member of the party. This is how things are done. Okay, here it's all a matter of deception. It's all about getting something on people. Do
you think they got stuff on
always
Biden?
A way.
You think they've got stuff on Joe Biden or on Hunter, his family?
Listen, Hunter's a nugget head. Okay, and if he's been over in China, if he's been here, that man has been completely and utterly compromised. He will not have fallen into a honey trap. He will have jumped off the high board, done a backflip, a double somersault, and straight in to a belly flop into the honey trap.
Right.
That man is a danger to himself and his family and the country. Absolutely.
Exactly. Zero scrutiny during that campaign. About the fact that he was so blackmailable, unbelievable.
And
therefore
very
his
biddable.
father. Sorry, carry on, Angus. Carry on.
Of course, Joe's raked it in a bit.
There is a lot. I mean, those pictures of him smoking a crack pipe and all the rest of it. And he did have business, Hunter, in China, didn't he?
Yeah.
What was that?
His business, it's really, the Chinese, not doing business. They're doing business on you. And if you ever think you've got the upper hand of the Chinese, you are deluded. I remember there used to be a page on the British Embassy website in Beijing, which read along the lines of, don't come for business, business is coming to China. Don't come to China and sign a contract with a company here and then go back home rubbing your hands in glee, because by the time your foot hits the tarmac in London, the terms and conditions of that contract will have changed, because it for them, it's not a fixed thing. It's just a thing that means, okay, we're going to cooperate on some level. But the some level that people cooperate on here is, I will financially rape you, and if you have the timidity to point out to me that I'm financially raping you, I will criticize you for being rude. They really like that, You go, you're cheating me. And they go, how dare you? Yes, you're right, but how dare you? That's so rude. And you're not going to win. In the end, prior to the Olympics, the embassy were asked by the Beijing government to, of course,
Hey, Ken, get closer to that mic. You just went a bit quiet again. Carry on.
Sorry. So the government in Beijing, of course, asked the embassy to take that.
Angus, sorry, I'm always referring to last week. Carry on, please. Carry on.
Yeah. So yes, you're not going to win against the Chinese. That's for sure. When it comes down to negotiations, when it comes down to tricky dicky, sneaky snidey, all of that kind of stuff. Look at our own government. I mean, Theresa May, what was she thinking about, suggesting that the Chinese could even get remotely involved in our nuclear energy industry? What do our politicians think they're doing, inviting the Chinese to do the communications
Huawei
technology for the underground? Are you absolutely out of your brain? Have you forgotten who you're dealing with? No, the problem is they don't even know who they're dealing with, because
do they care?
People who are
that jeopardizes, what is it, Five Eyes, essentially. Where is the president of the United States saying you have got to be joking? And even Trump didn't push it, in my opinion, as hard as he should. I think he should have said, you got to be joking if you think we're going to do any trade deal with you unless you bin Huawei, because there's absolutely just to explain to people, please, the relationship between any single business and the CCP.
You will do what you're told. You will give us what information we require. That's how it works. Every business over here, by the way, you have to remember that most businesses are required by law to have a member of the Communist Party in that business to basically just spy on the business itself. Now, if they want information, you have to give it. And if they want you to do something, you have to do it. It's as simple as that. There is no discussion. Okay?
It's actually law, isn't it? As opposed to just being a kind of a, bully boy tactic. It is actually the law, no?
It's law and politics of the land, because you have to understand that as far as the government is concerned, nobody actually owns a business per se. You do have it, you do own it, but the government, they are the real owners behind everything on behalf of the people of the country. Yeah? So they can do what they want. I mean, recently, about 2 weeks ago, the largest independent oil producer in China, which did something in the region of about 20 million barrels a year, was just snapped up by the government. Boom, you're no longer in charge. We are, and that's how it goes. And the DD transport company, which is kind of like Uber taxis, they have recently come under government scrutiny as well. Particularly because they rushed their own IPO very quickly through without really talking to the government, and they knew that in September the government was going to bring in new laws which would effectively stop Chinese companies from floating on the international stock exchanges. But what the government really didn't like was the fact that Didi, because they not only do taxi services, they also do a range of other products, have a large database of people in the government. Basically, in essence, they have a larger database than the government, one that they can connect with in many and various ways. And so the government wants that under control. And you can see in the future, I guarantee, that more than 50% of that will be signed over to the CCP at some point in the future, because that's what happened to Jack Ma, which I saw about a year and a half.
Yeah,
before
Jack
that
Ma.
happened. I told my wife.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
a year and a half before Ma disappeared for 3 months, a year and a half before that, I told my wife, you wait, next year, this guy is going to either be dead, he'll be in prison, or he'll have to hand over his company. And they shut him up for 3 months, and when he came back he was all very sheepish, and they were putting out memes over here. The government was putting out memes of a horse in the clouds, because of course Ma in Chinese means horse, and showing that he's not the because he may have a lot of fans in China, but he's not the government, and as I understand it, he signed over 56% of his company to 3-party members.
Really?
So,
goodness.
For the benefit of the country, of course. And so, and he wanted to float ANT, which was his, financial, insurance and finance corporation, wanted to float that in the West, and the government just slapped that down, basically because he said that the current methods of banking and so on in China are outdated and not moving with the times. So that was enough for them to absolutely slap him right down with a bang.
So you're not really recommending totalitarianism?
No, I'm not. Yeah, it's really fascism, because when you think about it, it's corporate fascism.
It is fascism, isn't it? I mean, literally.
It is.
Mussolini's definition.
Yes, exactly.
It was basically business, politics, collusion. Political, business, collusion. That's all fascism is. The jackboots are optional, no?
When you've got a party like this, when you have a single party and you start off as socialists and you become communists.
Angus, you're quiet. You're quiet again. You're very quiet again.
Oh, sorry. Hello there.
That's better.
Yeah?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. So when you start off as socialists, then become communists, and then you have to open your country because everybody's eaten all of their pets, and you need money and food. Then you have to rebrand yourself, or you certainly have to change the way you do things. And so then it devolves into fascism, essentially, which is...
You're right. Actually, you're absolutely right. It is not communism at all, is it? It's completely fascism.
And that's what we're seeing in the West as well. That's what's occurring now.
Or is it I suppose you could argue it's a mix. This comes back to pretty much my first question, which is how would you define these politics in China now? I mean, it's basically just a bunch of rich buggers who are raping the rest of the country, no?
Oh yeah, I mentioned earlier that they have, the renminbi is essentially toy money. So all these billions of dollars come into China from abroad when people buy a Chinese product. That is then converted into toy money, paper money that they give to the public. The actual real currencies, the tradable currencies, are then sent outside of China. And in 2017, the man who manages their accounts outside of China refused to come into China, so they actually had him kidnapped from Hong Kong. This was in the papers, you can check it out. And then a couple of weeks later, he was thrown back outside of the hotel in a wheelchair, tied to the wheelchair with a bag over his head. Obviously, he's got the situation under control, because if you do anything to me, there are X amount of locations around the world which are going to dump a load of data on the internet, and you're going to be done. It's estimated to be something in the region of about $4.3 trillion. Wow, I tell you, I am in serious trouble if this gets to the wrong ears. But that is the reality of why
it will do, Angus.
Yeah, this is
I'm
why
afraid
they
it
went
will
in
do.
there. Yeah, well, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I mean, you've come out with some fascinating stuff today and all the rest of it. I mean, I'm very grateful. We did have a long chat about this before the show as well. But should you have done this?
Well, I've told you, I'm not in the best of health now. My end is nigh. So what they're going to do? Kill me? Well, thanks. You just kind of like hurry it up for me, Torture me? Well, what the hell? My life's been pretty weird, strange, and interesting. So I'm not frightened in that sense, Yeah, okay, it'll be awful and screaming and whatever. I don't give a monkeys now. I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm past caring almost, because I've really had it. I've had it. I've been here far too long. We should have gotten out a long time ago, but unfortunately we couldn't. And now we are. If I'm forced to stay here, then I'm going to have my opinion, because this is the one thing. And the first time we chatted, before today, I've so missed being able to speak my mind, because over here you can't really. I do have the odd couple of people that I know, Chinese people, who will talk to me about these kinds of things, but you never know whether or not they're reporting on you themselves, or what. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. If it happens to me, it happens to me. Whatever.
I'll tell you what.
Kind of like,
aside from the fact that you're a very brave man and with a tremendous experience, I know from your travels that we haven't really gone into today. Maybe another time, or maybe not, what have you. But I'm really grateful and absolutely fascinated, and I hope that people bother to listen to this and maybe to think about what we're doing around the world at the moment. God bless you, Angus. Angus Tuttle, thank you very much indeed. Please stay there for a second, Angus, because I'd like to have a personal chat with you. God bless you, mate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, that's not it. That's the wrong one. There you go. Oh, so there you go. This has been the Daily Chaos with me, Ollie Connolly, and my special guest, Angus Tuttle. God bless him. Chinese dissident. Well, Geordie dissident, living in China. Geordie living in Geordie. Oh, he just can't stand the bloody CCP. Look, do us a favour, folks. If you can support the show, if you want to sponsor next week's show, please do. Thank you. God bless you, Jay, Pauline and Leah, who sponsored this week's show. Down there, buymeacoffee.com/Daily Chaos. Thursdays, this time. Or 2 hours ago until this time. 2 hours and 15 minutes or something like that. Apologies to Revolution Radio for muting at the beginning there as well. They're gone now. We finished that with them at the top of the app. Thank you, Wake Up UK, who also cut me off at 5 minutes past the hour as well. But God bless you, Wake Up UK and Revolution.radio. Oh yeah, God bless you. And YouTube.com/Daily Chaos. Bugger YouTube, yeah. I just use them. Just like they use me. But all of you watching, thank you. Very, very surreal show. I tell you, it did. Angus, it was like doing an infomercial for democracy. Very, very weird concept. Where have we got to? I can't believe I just did a bloody infomercial for democracy. That's where we are. Yeah, okay. See you next week. Here's to us. And bugger plutocracy. Yeah. Bugger the Great Reset. Ciao, y'all. Lots of love.